Got a lot of news to talk about today. New Japan makes its triumphant return as we speak, actually.
Couple hours.
But really, I don't know what the
2.5
hours. What the point of it is, because, Dave, we have seen the greatest wrestling match of all time.
It was a hell of a
think
match.
Of it? It was
the
great.
match itself. That was a hell of a match. Yeah. It wasn't the greatest match of all time, but that was pretty much impossible. But it was a hell of a match. They had incredible advantages. Unfortunately, Edge tore his triceps in one of the retakes. I don't know the spot that he got hurt. One person speculated to me, but I don't think he knew that it may have been the second or third time they did that RKO. You know, the spot where he comes off the top ropes into the RKO?
Yeah.
It might have been there. But I don't know. The thing is, it's because people are going to go on like, what did you rate it? And it's like, I would rate it.
Actually, before you go to the rating, so that would explain why. Because I was watching the whole match, just waiting to see where he tore his triceps. And he did the whole match. They go all the way to the finish. His arm looked fine the entire time. So basically, you're saying they taped the entire match start to finish. Then they did a few
multiple
retakes.
times. Multiple. There was multiple stuff that was taped a second time.
Sure, but they taped the match from start to finish. He finished the match with no torn triceps. Then they went back to
right. He got hurt. I do know he got hurt in the second taping, not the first taping.
Okay, so something happened after he had done the entire match, which is why
Yes.
he made it through the entire match that we saw without what appeared to be a torn triceps.
I believe so. So. I was told the injury was during the second taping when they went through other stuff. So this is like a combination of things. That's why it's kind of like you can't, for a number of reasons, it's really not fair to rate it because, like, just bring as example, if AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, who I thought had a phenomenal match on SmackDown, and that was also taped weeks ago. So, people go, well, that was taped weeks ago too. What's the difference? The difference is that it was taped, and they could have added sound sweetening, although they didn't. But it's like, to me, you can't compare a movie with a play. Pro wrestling is, generally speaking, like if you're going to say, what's the best play you ever saw? Well, it's a better one. You can't say that the best boxing match ever was Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed, even though it was probably more exciting than almost any boxing match in history. Of course, boxing's legitimate and this isn't. But the point is that when you have, if you have two guys who are doing a boxing exhibition, a fake boxing match, let's say, and then you have two other guys who are, doing retakes and replays and sound effects put in and everything like that, you can't compare them. It's like, if I said that Randy Orton and Edge was a better match than AJ and Daniel Bryan, it's completely unfair to AJ and Daniel Bryan because they essentially did it in one take, and these guys had, multiple takes. I mean, there's a lot of people who, if they had multiple takes, you could, lengthen it. Like you can do a 30-minute match, then you do another 30-minute match, you put it together, and it's a 45-minute match, which is not what happened here, but it is similar in some ways. Any spots that didn't look good, you did again. You put in sound effects, which is funny because of what Randy Orton said the other day about thigh slapping, and then they threw in sound effects in this. You throw in fake crowd noise. I mean, one point where this thunderous, this is awesome chants, and I'm looking at the people, and no one's lips are moving. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, okay, it's like, I can't, it's just not fair to people who do pro wrestling matches. But I mean, in the finished product, it was fantastic. And, even I'm certain, one take, not edited, it was probably one hell of a match. But, there were things edited in. And he's, torn tricep which is interesting because I was asked earlier today, and I don't know, of course, obviously I don't know the answer. But, what would his mentality be? You come back your first, I guess, essentially, I guess you would call it your third match back. You tear your tricep after being out for 9 years. Is that a message, or, how do you take that? I mean, I presume he's going to come back from it.
Maybe the message is don't do a bunch of retakes of dangerous spots in your match, or spots that, for whatever reason, you had to do a retake.
They didn't do anything dangerous, though. I mean, compared to most guys.
Dave, if you tear your triceps doing something, then
Well, if
there
you tear
was
your triceps,
obviously a level of danger to that.
Yeah, but what, coming off the top ropes into an RKO? I mean, it's like that wouldn't be high on the list of things to avoid. I mean, it's just shit happens when you're, I mean, that's pro wrestling. I mean, even safe pro wrestling. I mean, you know better than anyone that most of the times when guys get hurt, it's not doing dangerous stuff. It's doing routine stuff that just something happens, and that's what, essentially happened here. But it's also not always. I mean, the thing is with torn triceps is a unique injury, and it's there's so it's like it's one of those things that you get because of what you're doing. I mean, not what you're doing in the match, so to speak, but is what you're doing in other ways, whether it comes to training or whatever it is. Not whatever. And I don't know, it could be a fluke thing, but, do you, at 46, 47, do you come back from that? I think he probably will, but I'm not in his head, so I don't know. But, you come back so quick and then you get that level of an injury, it's something to think about. Because one of the problems one of the problems with getting older and continuing to wrestle is that either you completely tone down your wrestling or you're going to get hurt, even with a very limited schedule, which he's going to have anyway. I mean, obviously he's coming back for whatever it was. I mean, I know the report was 5 matches a year, and I was told that it's more than 5. But this year it'll probably be less than 5, given he's probably going to be out for months.
Well, I was watching the 4th episode of Undertaker's documentary, and it wasn't in this one, but I think it was one of the previous ones. He was talking about how it's hard to do one match a year. Everyone thinks it's easier to do one match a year, but it's actually harder because
it's different.
You're having to do things completely differently than being out there every night and doing your match. And I mean, when you think about Edge in this match here, I mean, how often for the rest of his life is he going to go out there and work 44 minutes and then go back in and, probably cold, do another spot, repeat this spot, take the RKO off the rope 3 times or whatever, redo this spot, redo that spot. I mean, never. He's probably never going to do that again in his career. And, I mean, maybe that had something to do with the torn triceps. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. But, I mean, that is a lot of wear and tear on your body to do that all day long.
True. But most of the time, torn triceps isn't so much what you do in the match as much as what you do not in the match. I mean, it's like, it's not an injury like, like a broken nose where somebody hits you in the nose and you break your nose. Torn tricep is usually something to do with training, and things like that. Or, it can be, obviously it's more heavily you're more heavily predisposed to tear your tricep if you're doing a lot of steroids, which I'm not saying he is and I'm not saying that he isn't, but it is, torn triceps, torn abs, and torn thighs are, generally in sports, torn pecs are generally considered steroid injuries in sports, whereas torn biceps and torn hamstrings are from running too fast without warming up. Torn biceps can be from a lot of things. I mean, you can, if you take a lot of steroids, you are more predisposed to torn biceps, but I've seen a lot of people tear their biceps that didn't do steroids, whereas I mean, I don't want to say, I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone who tears their quad that isn't doing steroids. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I remember when, NFL coaches, one of the NFL coaches would talk to me and just said that, like, when steroids came in, there were all these new injuries that nobody, those are the ones I mentioned. So, like, nobody in the NFL ever got these injuries. Then steroids came into the game, and then we started getting these injuries that this is a guy who dates back to the 60s, before. I think steroids actually started in the NFL around 62, but they probably didn't get plentiful until the 70s. But late 60s, I'd say late 60s is probably fair. But, he said how, like, before, they played the same football game and probably played a more dangerous version because as the game progresses, rules make it safer and safer, but, the steroids, which led to bigger people running at a higher speed with larger collisions, created, those injuries, but also created the muscle tears, that they weren't getting, the type of muscle tears that they weren't getting before. So, you could, whatever. It's so, as far as, you could say it's a fluke, but the other problem with the triceps, and we saw that with Batista, who did come back from it, but when you do it once, people who tear their triceps are way more predisposed to tearing it a second time from something much easier, because so that's another, it's another thing to think about from his standpoint. He's making so much money, I gotta think he'll come back. If it was like a neck injury, I would say that might be a sign from God. Your first match back, you hurt your neck again. Thank God he didn't do that. But tricep injury, he's still going to be out for a while, unfortunately. But, yeah.
Well, overall, I thought the match was great. I thought that even taking out the crowd noise and any editing that they did, I thought that Randy Orton worked his ass off. Edge worked his ass off. The selling was great. The story was great. I just thought it was awesome.
I agree. I thought the match was great. I wish they didn't put in the fake crowd noise. I thought that was more of a negative than a positive because it was so fake and obvious. But again, they were in there trying to, they set a real high standard, greatest match of all time. So they were gonna over edit it and they were gonna overproduce it and all that. So it was just, that was just what they were going to do. I think it would have been, like I said, I think it would have been better, again, but you don't really, even those fans that were there, which are the Performance Center guys, they're doing, let's go Edge, let's go Randy, let's go. And it's like, I wish that they would, since they're told how to cheer anyway, why don't you tell them to like boo the heel and cheer the baby face? Because that's what this match was about. Instead of doing, that cheering is cool for a moves match, or a face versus face match or something. And it was okay here, but considering you're controlling the crowd, why don't you have them, enhance what the guys were doing as opposed to, chant like ringsiders will chant in a match. I guess this is probably the kind of cheering that they grew up on because they're all young and probably never saw the other style of chanting, which is better, but even in the post editing, they had that's what they were piping in, they were piping in, fight forever, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, God, fake fight forever chants, fake this is awesome chants, I don't know. It hurt it for me. Yeah, Randy Orton was phenomenal in the match, and so was Edge. Yeah, it was. They definitely, it was a super match. But like I said, if Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles had the same thing, I think that their match would be significantly better than it was, and that match was fantastic. And probably would be better than this match if you gave them the same chance to, do the same thing and then do it again and then clean up any problems and go longer by editing stuff. There's just ways to do it in the environment that they had, which literally no other wrestler other than Undertaker and AJ, and pretty much as far as like attempting to do a match, and that's not really a match, that was more of a movie scene, has had, I wouldn't say ever, but that I can recall. It's not like, any of these other people that we talk about that have great matches are put in a position. I guess Stadium Stampede, I should say, that's which is a fair comparison. Stadium Stampede was certainly exactly the same thing, and more, that was, but even then, that was like still, even Stadium Stampede was like they finished at 5 a.m, and then we saw it, like 14 hours later, not a week later. And they didn't, they didn't pump in fake crowd noise. And they certainly edited heavily, and they certainly could have done retakes and probably did. But it was, it's one of those things where, because they will probably always promote it as this, that it will, likely go down as an all-time classic match. And in some ways it was. I just wish that it was a more fair comparison to, like, say, AJ and Daniel Bryan, who I really thought had a better match, or would have had a better match under the same circumstances. You give them 20 extra minutes, yeah, without a doubt, you can kick out of everybody in the circuit's finisher. I think that they would have, because I thought their match was just about as good in a one take as these guys had, with a lot more opportunity and certainly a lot more leeway on what they were allowed to do.
I thought the Daniel Bryan AJ match was awesome, but I thought that this match was better. And really, one of the things also was just because it was on SmackDown, they went through. They had 4 commercial breaks, which means we missed like 12 to 15 minutes of that match because of commercials.
We probably didn't, because it was taped ahead of time. Those breaks were probably only 30 seconds each that went 4 minutes on TV. But of course it's better because it had the opportunity to be better. But given the same,
no, I actually thought the work in the ring by Edge and Randy Orton was better.
But how do you know? You're watching stuff that was done over and over again. It's not the same thing. You can't even compare it. It's not a fair comparison to any one take match that you've ever seen. It was great, and you can say it was great, but if you want to compare it to another match, it's not fair unless the people have the same situation where they can go in there and go, let's do this all over again, and let's do this all over again. Nobody else gets that opportunity. That's my point.
They don't get the opportunity, but I can see everyone's selling. I can see everyone's execution. I can see the story of the match. Obviously, they did some retakes, but that match was largely 44 minutes. And they fixed some things, I'm sure, here and there. But the idea that they were going for 12 straight hours to put that match together, and everything was shot 5 times, it wasn't. It was actually, from what I understand, it was a combination. So it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't 45 minutes straight. It was different times. It's not like they went 45 minutes like say, what's a 45-minute match? Well, Kenny Omega and Tanahashi did a 40-minute match at the Tokyo Dome. I mean, that was a 40-minute match. This was something different. I'm not saying one's better than because you can't compare one to the other. You can't compare a movie scene with a play. A movie is going to be better than a play because you're working on it more. So yeah, it's better, but that doesn't mean that the people in the play didn't actually do a better job by doing it in one take. I mean, because it's a different animal. So that's my point. It's like you can't say, oh, this and this. Because it wasn't a one take, so it's not the same thing. I think that you're greatly overstating the amount of extra work that was put into that match.
I'm not.
In the sense of, if you're making a movie, to do a 45-minute scene, this is days. And
yes, and this was not days.
This was not sitting there at the Performance Center for days putting this match together.
No. This was not days, but it's not. It's still not the same thing. It's if you allow guys to with all these benefits and everything like that, it's still a different animal from a pro wrestling match. I mean, Stadium Stampede is a comparison, but even then, like I said, they didn't have the post-editing time to do the same thing. And I would never compare Stadium Stampede to a pro wrestling match. It's ridiculous to compare it. I mean, it was a phenomenal entertainment thing, as was this. They're both phenomenal entertainment things, and they are I guess you could say they are a form of a pro wrestling match, but to compare them to a one-take pro wrestling match is not fair to the people who do one-take pro wrestling matches, because it's not the same thing. I mean, if you know, I mean, it's just, you know, you're adding.
This to me honestly sounds like the old school argument that if you choreograph your match from start to finish,
it's
not the same as going in there and calling it from start to finish.
No, it's not. It's completely different. No, I don't care if you choreograph your match from start to finish if you do an entertaining match. And I don't care about this in the sense that, yes, the finished product was a super match, but you cannot compare an edited match. Like, okay, the comparison, and again, but even Lucha Underground, and I would always say, like, I cannot rate Lucha Underground because the matches were, the way the matches are done, you know, you do long matches, you edit out the bad stuff and everything like that. But even Lucha Underground did not do retakes. Lucha Underground, well, I guess they did a little bit, but they really didn't. I mean, not at this level. Lucha Underground would do matches, and then, you know, weeks later, actually months later, they would put them on TV and they would edit out all the botches. And but they didn't retake, like, okay, like they didn't like stop and go, okay, we're going to do this scene 6 times in a row, like you would do in a movie, or you would do or even in a television show for that matter. It's still not it's not even the same thing as Lucha Underground. So
I feel we can disagree on this, but I feel if you edit out botched spots, that is no different from retaping a botched spot.
Yeah, I know, but it's not this. Like I said, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as a one-take match. Either way, Lucha Underground's not the same, and this isn't the same. But even Lucha Underground did not combine things like this. Lucha Underground. Let me finish. Lucha Underground would do a match, and then they would edit out things that didn't go well and try to put it together. Now, Lucha Underground did not do this type of a match because Lucha Underground was all about high spots and all about, you know, things like that. So it was a different style. But this was something else. This was, where they did multiple takes and things like that, which Lucha Underground didn't do. And they did multiple different editing tricks and things like that, which Lucha Underground did do. But it's the closest comparison would be a mix of Lucha Underground and Stadium Stampede, as opposed to what we normally see and what we would compare with something else. The finished product was fantastic. It just, you know, again, but how do you compare it with a regular match? You can't. Like I never would say about what I would say about Lucha Underground. It's like, I can't go give 4 stars to a match where they're editing so much out and you'll never see a botched spot, because even though sometimes they didn't get every botched spot out, but you normally won't when you're doing all kinds of high risk stuff, and it looks so great because, you know, it's not like watching Friday Night at Arena Mexico where, you know, it's like, this is what you get. You know what I mean? Then this is what traditional pro wrestling is. And it's like, if you want to do that, it's fine. I'm not saying that they're cheating. I'm just saying it's not the same thing, because it's not. It's not the same thing.